Think back to the fall of 2019. The Last Jedi had divided the fan base, Solo bombed at the box office, and J.J. Abrams was set to resurrect a man thought to be dead since the 1980s. Disney-era Star Wars had left a lot of people disenfranchised and slowly, if not already, checking out from the brand entirely. But then, a little show called The Mandalorian came along. Nobody really knew anything about this show, but it was going to be the first live-action TV show for Star Wars. Pedro Pascal would star in the lead as a Mandalorian bounty hunter set 5 years after Return of the Jedi, but who was this mysterious masked man? Was he Boba Fett in hiding, or was he an entirely new character? Thankfully, the answer was the latter, and Boba Fett wasn't in this show. Until he was. And that's what I want to talk about today. In my humble opinion, Star Wars needs new faces and places. The Mandalorian was a breath of fresh air for the franchise because it was starring characters that we had never met before and taking us to locations that we had never seen before. It was also taking place in part of the timeline that we had never really walked through before, and thanks to the creative mind of Jon Favreau, that walk was accompanied by a charismatic lead who never showed his face and didn't even really speak that much. This show did the unimaginable. It made Star Wars fun again. It seemed like everyone, both sequel lovers and haters alike, were able to come together and praise this show as one. We were following a new cast of characters on their own adventures completely separate from the stories of Luke Skywalker and Emperor Palpatine. Emphasis on were. The Mandalorian's first season is a very solid start to the Disney Plus brand, and its use of member berries to sell people on newer things worked to its benefit. Hey, it's a droid that looks just like that one from The Empire Strikes Back. I remember. Hey, it's a baby of the same species as Yoda. I remember. Hey, it's that black sword from the Clone Wars. I remember. The Mandalorian second season was greenlit prior to the first season releasing any episodes at all, and Jon Favreau had pitched the show with 2 seasons pinned from the start. It wasn't the huge success of the first season that caused Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni to really crank up the nostalgia and cameos. It seems like that was their plan from the beginning. But for all the originality that the first season carried with new faces and places that still felt familiar and welcoming within the franchise, season 2 just became the cameo season. This was probably the best time to run a reaction channel on YouTube, because week by week, people would flock to comment sections on YouTube and Twitter threads to discuss how insane it was to finally see Cobb Vanth, Bo-Katan, Ahsoka Tano, Boba Fett, and Luke Skywalker, all in live action for either the first time ever or for the first time since the 1980s. Please hold off on commenting, "Oh my god bro, you don't like The Mandalorian season 2? You just hate everything Disney Star Wars, you're not a real fan." Trust me, that one part of my brain that loves a good Star War went absolutely nuts when all these people showed up. But we've now had almost 2 years to reflect on these first 2 seasons, and I think now that Obi-Wan has finished, it's worth talking about what I think Star Wars needs to focus on. Everyone and their grandmother was watching The Mandalorian, and most of them had never seen the Clone Wars or Rebels, so they don't know who any of these characters are. Like I said, seeing all these people was insanely cool, but after Bo-Katan, it was very clear that week by week, or every other week, we would be treated to another big cameo or surprise appearance. This way of telling stories in Star Wars is an easy way to get loud roars and cheers from audiences of Star Wars nerds, but a lot of the time, it's just that. It's like how you can tell how you were meant to react and feel when Rey took the last name Skywalker. The line, "Rey Skywalker," being delivered to an old lady who doesn't know what the hell Skywalker means, is only included to make the audience cheer and applaud. But when Bo-Katan showed up, for example, I would wager the most common reaction out of casual audiences was probably just, "Oh, cool, a female Mandalorian," or "Oh, Battlestar Galactica." It starts to feel excessive by the time Ahsoka Tano shows up, but who am I kidding? I was like a kid on Christmas when that episode dropped. Fans who knew her live-action debut was coming were ecstatic, and people who had no idea who she was had a flood of articles to scroll through explaining her backstory and which episodes of the animated shows to watch. When Boba Fett first showed his face, rumors immediately spread that he was getting his own show, which made sense. But first, he's placed right into the middle of the Mandalorian's conflict with Moff Gideon, and becomes his chauffeur once his own ship gets blown up. I've heard people say Boba Fett was underutilized in this show, but as critical as I've been of these cameos, if I'm being honest, he takes enough of a backseat after his action-packed debut, which helped him not steal the spotlight from the main characters. Unfortunately for Mr. Fett, the exact opposite would happen when the Mandalorian stopped by to say hello in his own show. And finally, fans all came together when this guy with dead eyes and an uncanny face showed up with a green lightsaber and a robotic voice to come take Grogu and train him to be a Jedi. I think most of us felt like this was peak Star Wars, and I still stand by that statement right now, but now that we have the immediate follow-up in a show that was supposed to be about Boba Fett, I don't know, man, it just doesn't feel the same. I think this way of telling a story in Star Wars set fan expectations too high, because a show as unassuming as The Bad Batch seemed to disappoint some people just because the season didn't end with someone stepping out of the shadows and saying, "I am Glup Shitto." So where am I going with all this? Well, now that Obi-Wan is finished and you all have definitely watched my video reviewing it where I mentioned in passing that the series is a big cash-in on prequel nostalgia, I want to make this video expressing my desires for the future of Star Wars. Namely, I think Star Wars just needs new faces and new places. A show like The Mandalorian's first season that people can jump straight into with zero expectations or attachment to anything set within the story from the start has the greatest chances of turning into something iconic that everyone can enjoy. Perhaps it's just me, but I'm kind of getting tired of Lucasfilm and Disney greenlighting shows and spin-offs they can just market mainly through nostalgia. I'm sure it makes for great discussions in the making of documentaries as you go over the journey an iconic character has undertaken since their inception decades prior. But I can't help but feel that I'm losing interest in catching up with these characters we already know because Disney-era Star Wars is proving unable to tell stories that elevate the people we already know and introduce us to new people we want to get to know more. As a result of this lack of trust, I genuinely believe the smartest and safest thing that Lucasfilm and Disney can do is to create stories set during time periods that we either have never or rarely ever explored, and have the story be led by characters we've never met, while venturing to places we've never been before. Constantly placing stories within the Star Wars timeline that make them either a prequel to one property but a sequel to another doesn't wipe away all the tension. I mean, we know what happens in 20 some odd years after The Mandalorian, but we don't know how the story of Din Djarin and Grogu ends right now. When you tell new stories with new characters and locations, it feels so refreshing as fans get to speculate and converse endlessly about where the next part of the story is heading. Can you all remember how much endless debate there was about the direction of the movies immediately following The Force Awakens? For 2 years it was non-stop and then seemingly all kind of fizzled out after The Last Jedi. But I digress. Star Wars just needs to be new again. Like I've said before, I'm actually pretty excited to see what Andor has to offer, but I've also commented on how a show like this could have been led by anyone. Having a lead we've never met before may actually have raised tensions even higher due to us not knowing their fate, unlike with Cassian. But Cassian could have been a supporting character or made a cameo throughout. You get my point. I don't think anybody knows anything about the Acolyte, like at all. We know it has a female lead, and it's set prior to The Phantom Menace. But who knows, this show may actually shape up to be exactly what I'm talking about right now, with new faces and new places to be introduced to. There's never been a Star Wars movie or show set before The Phantom Menace, and with the early interviews implying it would be about the dark side, I think this show really has a chance to differentiate itself from the other Disney Plus shows. But out of all the shows and movies that have currently been announced, I think the biggest contender for biggest breath of fresh air is just around the corner. You may have heard reports that Millie Bobby Brown is in talks for a role in Star Wars. And yeah, I know she looks like Leia and she looks like Padme, but I can't imagine she's gonna get $12 to $15 million for a TV series. No, I think the real answer lies in the hands of Taika Waititi. Taika Waititi, the mind behind Thor Ragnarok, Jojo Rabbit, What We Do in the Shadows, and Thor Love and Thunder, is slated to be writing and directing the next Star Wars movie. No, this is not a special on Disney Plus, but instead a return to theaters for Star Wars after The Rise of Skywalker. Virtually nothing about this movie is known, other than Waititi has implied it takes place after the sequel trilogy and follows completely new characters. If you're anything like me, this prospect is already intriguing and exciting because Taika Waititi produces absolute gold. I'm genuinely more excited to see what he does with Star Wars now than I ever was for the sequel trilogy when it was announced back when I was in middle school. I don't think it's far-fetched to assume they're casting for the movie right now, and Millie Bobby Brown in a lead role is sure to bring in casual viewers who have only seen one or two of the Star Wars. That's another thing I think is so great about properties like this. People who had never seen Star Wars before tuned in to see The Mandalorian, and I really think we could see the same thing happen for this movie's box office. Again, I don't know anything about this movie other than what I already told you, but it sounds like a movie that anybody will be able to go see without really having needed to see the previous movies. These types of fresh and original stories make the franchise more accommodating to casual viewers, but it also gets me excited once again for Star Wars. Cameos and member berries for fan service are cool, but they're done the best when they are used sparingly and clearly elevate the story unfolding for the main cast of new characters. If you tell this kind of story right, it won't take long for these new cast of characters to be, well, not considered new. The Mandalorian has only been in Star Wars since 2019, but is arguably one of the most iconic figures in the franchise in the eyes of the public. I love Star Wars so much, but I'm really just sitting here tapping my foot waiting for a new creative mind to come by and slap me across the face with their paintbrush and take me through their vision as an artist and show me something new in Star Wars. Thank you all so much for watching. I finally have my clips and gaming channel set up, so make sure you subscribe to those. If you like my content, make sure you like this video and subscribe with notifications on. If you want to stay in touch and help grow my community, join my Discord, follow me on Instagram, and follow me on Twitter. If you want to take your support to the next level, consider supporting me on Patreon. I am Remnicore. I will see you all in the next one.